Thank you. Thank you for your warm welcome. I'm going to improvise a little bit. Thanks to my colleague Joan Freeman, she improvised with something very provocative today, and she got such a ample response. People were very interested in something that was made you think. She didn't have answers. She put out a lot of questions. So I'd like to continue in that trend. And also I want to pick up on something that Dr. Nandi mentioned yesterday. When he was here monitoring a session, he asked, what's the difference between giftedness, talent, and genius? And I'm going to give you my ideas that giftedness, or the focus of giftedness, is to do no harm. That is, the gifted person is born, and basically those who work with gifted people should just not harm them and just protect them. Whereas talent development is focused on taking gifts and providing a path towards a productive way to live and use those gifts if the person so chooses. So there's no coercion. If you have a gift, you don't have to use it, but it's the responsibility of teachers and parents and psychologists to show paths to use those gifts in productive ways. And I'm going to tell you about 3 studies that I conducted that gave me insights into what I think are some of the better ways of conducting talent development. So, the first study I did when I got to my first major position as a professor was to look at the alumni of a famous laboratory school where I was working. And this school had been around for about 50 years. It was very selective. It used IQ as the selection criteria. Only people in the top 1% and 2% were accepted. Thousands of people applied, and then 300 of the people of the 1,000 were invited to audition, basically, by showing how they behaved in a simulated classroom, and then 50 children are selected. So basically it was decided that it was more selective than Harvard University. And the idea was, well, what happens to these people when they're in middle age? And we could try to answer that question because the school had been in existence for that long. So I followed up on about 2/3, I could find about 2/3 of the individuals. And it turned out that they were contented and happy, but not especially productive or creative. And this was very shocking to me because here were these very brilliant people who went to a very innovative school, who had highly educated parents. So this was a mystery to me because everything was in place that I had believed, and most of the people in our field had believed, was what you needed in order to nurture gifted gifts. So I looked to the literature, the research literature, and I went back to the ideas from my professor, Abraham Tannenbaum, and he had recently published some research that was a synthesis of the literature. And he said you need 5 things in order to go from a gift to eminence, to make a real contribution to society. And you need to have some IQ, but it doesn't have to be the very highest, it depends on your field. And you need to have educational opportunity. And those two things were in existence in this school. So we had the IQ and we had educational opportunities. But there were three other things in his model. One was special ability. And he used the expression that you could have a very high IQ and grow up to be an excellent party conversationalist. So you would know a lot about a lot of different things, but you have to be, in order to be a productive adult who's going to be eminent or a great thinker or producer, you need to focus on some domains. So you have to specialize in something. Another factor that he talked about was that chance plays a role in everyone's lives. Our lives are not totally predictable. So the question is, what do you do when chance offers you opportunities or when chance gives you setbacks? How do you respond to that is very important. And very tied into that are non-intellective factors. And non-intellective factors would be things like confidence, motivation, risk-taking. And we're going to talk a lot more about that during this brief session. Now, I also did some work with specialized science high schools. And I included this section because there's some interest by Jbnsts to develop specialized schools. And there are models around the world, and they're very effective and very important. And I want to tell you a little bit about the American schools and also why they have some of those factors that Tannenbaum talked about, but not all of them. So first of all, admission to specialized science high schools is based on a test. So there's a test, everyone comes and sits and takes, and they take the top students. There are 5 different models. So in places like New York City that have many millions of students, this test is given to everyone in the city who wants to take it, and a layer of students who passes get into the school. There are other models where the school is for the entire state. So it's a residential school, and the state says you must take this many students from this district, and this many students from this district, and this many from this district. So the top students from each of the districts is taken. There are other models where it's an academy within a school, and so the whole school is a regular school, but there's a small science high school within the school. And finally, there are some schools in rural areas where students go to their regular school, but they travel every day to a science center to take their science and math classes, and then they go back to their regular school. These schools, science high schools, have an advanced curriculum with many electives in STEM. They also have very rich curriculum and everything else, in English, the arts, but most of the electives are in STEM. They offer the opportunity for authentic research. This is very important. So during the junior and senior year, the last 2 years of high school, they arrange for anyone who wants to go to a university or a hospital or a laboratory to be part of a research team. So this is, a very important section. It's an apprenticeship with science. There is no explicit coaching on non-intellective factors. So let's say I am, and this happened to me because I went to a science high school, I was the best student in my middle school, my junior high school. I thought I was the smartest thing in the world. Then I went to my science high school and I discovered I was not at all the smartest thing in the world. And there were other people who were amazing. And I spent 2 years thinking, this is a mistake. I don't belong here. Why? I'm taking somebody else's place. No one ever said a word to me. And later we discovered about half of the students felt the same way. But we never talked about this. And it was really a waste that we spent so much time worrying about such things. There was also no focus on preparing for a career. The focus was on preparing us to get into the best university. So it was short-term focus, how to go to a great university, not how do you become a scientist. A third study I conducted was at the Juilliard School, which is a world-famous music conservatory. And I'm going to try to convince you that this is a relevant example to look at. For one thing, the admission criteria are simply you have to play music. It's not a test, an abstract test. Everyone is told on the website, if you are 16 years old and you are looking for admission to Juilliard in violin, you must be able to do this, 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 and this. If you are applying to play the flute, you must be able to do this, this, and this, and you will have 10 minutes to show that you can do this, this, and this. Every student has at least 1 hour a week with the teacher alone. So the teacher knows your strengths and your weaknesses and gives you a plan for the next time. And the idea is eventually to focus on your strengths as a performer. But you start off with your strengths and your weaknesses. Every year, you have to show short-term growth. You have to perform in front of the entire faculty. And if you're not successful, that's it. You need to leave. So the whole idea is of benchmarks. You're expected every year to achieve a certain amount, and then you move on. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of long-term discussion. What are some different ways as a talented musician you can find happiness in your performance? Whether it's as a soloist, as an ensemble player, as a record producer, whatever. So there are a lot of there's a lot of focus on different career paths and advice on how to achieve your goals. And finally, for every instrument, there's a course that's informally called Reality 101. And in those courses, you talk a lot about motivation and social skills. So how to be successful in your interactions with people and how to help calm yourself from fear of stage fright, etc. And I thought this was so incredibly useful because the more talented you are, the more likely you're going to be taking risks. And the more likely in your creative